Good morning all, and welcome to Your Desktop in the Cloud, an overview of Windows Virtual Desktop and how you can make best use of it inside the education space. So my name is Robert Smith and I'm the Alliance Manager here at Sol-Tec, and I'm also joined today by Ryan Williams, who is our Senior Solutions Architect and our Specialist in Windows Virtual Desktop. So without any further ado, we'll kick on for the day. If anyone does have any questions throughout the presentation, please do stick them into the Q&A panel. Our moderators will collate them and we'll have an opportunity to answer all of those at the end. There's no such thing as a stupid question, so if you do have anything that you need some further information on, please do just post it in there and we'll do our best to answer it for you. So just to give you a brief rundown of the day, we're going to start off with a sort of an overview of desktop virtualization and why Windows Virtual Desktop is, we think, the way forward for your good selves. Then we're going to hand over to my colleague Ryan, who's going to give you a demo of the deployment and migration process of Windows Virtual Desktop. Then we're going to talk a little bit around some additional sources of information and where we might be able to help you go next. And then, as I say, finally at the end, there'll be an opportunity to ask and to answer any questions that you might have come across during the presentation. So just to give you a very brief overview of why we're here today. So Sol-Tec is a Microsoft Gold partner in a variety of different disciplines, as you can see. And we're also very proud to say that we're one of the first of the Windows Server and SQL Server migration to Microsoft Azure Advanced specialists. We were a partner award finalist for Azure Influence of the Year this year. And Microsoft has asked us here today to talk to you around specifically how Windows Virtual Desktop can be of a benefit to education. Not going to boil the ocean, but just to show that we do have a breadth of experience across the whole public and private sector, but we have a specific expertise and specialization into education as well. So we work with a number of educational authorities and establishments to help them achieve their digital transformation, and also to sort of transition to the cloud in a secure, managed and compliant way. So we just wanted to set the level in terms of knowledge to sort of go through. So apologies if we're teaching you how to suck eggs, but we just wanted to explain sort of why desktop virtualization, what does it do, why would you want it, and how is Windows Virtual Desktop different? So one of the main appeals of desktop virtualization has always been the ability to separate your horsepower and your compute operations from any user data. So by separating the user's applications, data and operating systems, and then hosting each of these in a remote server environment, you can centrally manage all your resource without compromising security in terms of that data being stuck on personal devices, for example. You can also ensure that your virtual machines are always running in close proximity to the apps and services that connect to your data center. But traditionally, though, desktop virtualization has often been complex and expensive to set up and to manage. It could take weeks or even months to get a successful implementation up and running and out and into the hands of your users. And when it was finally ready to use, users often suffered from a subpar experience compared to, say, a rich desktop or experience, particularly with regard to productivity apps. And Windows Virtual Desktop seeks to take all those headaches and limitations away. So Windows Virtual Desktop helps your employees stay as productive with a virtualized experience on a PC, phone, tablet, or browser as they are on a physical PC, sort of sitting at their desk or sitting right in front of them. It helps simplify management, provisioning, access to corporate data and apps. One of the key drivers has always been the ability to reduce costs, and particularly the resources associated with managing that sort of complex infrastructure. And it's always been seen as a driver to help IT transform the workplace and become a hero. So Windows Virtual Desktop is sort of always up to date and cloud connected, and you can manage that Windows Virtual Desktop experience via Microsoft Endpoint Manager or Config Manager in Intune, making management and monitoring easy while leveraging the skills of your existing teams. So we talked briefly there around all of the different components that you have to set up, and the sort of complexity of setting up setting up a remote desktop environment. The good news is that Windows Virtual Desktop takes care of a lot of that for you. So all those bits you see on this slide in the middle there inside the cloud, Windows Virtual Desktop does all that for you. So it allows you to get on with delivering value and not worry about configuring, setting up and sort of getting all of that up and running. The good news is as well, and we'll go into this in a little bit more detail later, but from a cost and licensing perspective, any of you that are licensed via sort of the A3 or A5 licensing model already have access to all of those services as part of that license entitlement. So you're only the only additional cost is sort of the cost of the VMs themselves, and then the storage that they're going to be taking up. So it can be a very attractive proposition from a cost reduction perspective as well. So just to set the scene for what we're going to talk about today, we're going to use a number of individuals to help tell you a story and to understand how Windows Virtual Desktop can help in each of these different scenarios. So we'll start with Julie, and she's the head of IT for a large university serving circa 20,000 students and around 2,000 staff and faculty. She worries about how to deliver IT students to all of those people that not only allows them to be as productive as possible, but also keeps her organization's data secure. She is under pressure from the senior management team to deliver services that help differentiate the university from others, ensuring that they continue to grow their student numbers and also attract the best staff in what is a highly competitive environment. Her budget has been reduced year on year, something I'm sure we can all relate to, and she's under pressure to save even more over the coming months and years. Now let's talk about Thomas. So Thomas is an infrastructure manager inside the same university. So Julie has asked Thomas to lead on delivering her vision for digital transformation, and Thomas knows their current on-premise technology better than anyone, and has delivered remote desktop and VDI solutions via traditional means for years. He knows that the cloud can provide benefits for him, but he doesn't fully understand how to make use of the new opportunities it presents. He's also being asked to deliver new services much more quickly than before. Both staff and students expect things to happen yesterday, and his current infrastructure is just not up to the job. He wants to improve the user experience and improve the feedback his team receives, but he also has a number of mission critical legacy applications, and he's doing his best to handle the growth in demand while being asked to consistently reduce costs. He knows that several of his core services are going end of support soon, and that his hardware is starting to creak and could do with a bit of an upgrade. And then finally, let's talk about Olivia. So Olivia finds herself studying or completing assignments away from the main campus environment. She wants access to all of her work and research sources wherever she is, while also being able to collaborate with her course mates and faculty staff on the go. She agonised quite hard over which university to attend, and was determined to pick the one with not only the best academic record, but also the one that supported how she likes to study. So now let's talk around Windows Virtual Desktop. So Windows Virtual Desktop sits and really delivers 4 key pillars, and we'll talk around each of those. So Windows Virtual Desktop allows you to provide your users with the only multi-session Windows 10 experience virtualized in the cloud that is always up to date, scales as you need it to, and is not only available, but also a great experience on whatever device your users choose to consume it on. Windows Virtual Desktop allows Julie to ensure that her students and staff can access the same desktop whenever and wherever they are, whether they choose to use their laptop, their phone, their iPad, or a combination of all of them, they have access to the same apps and files, but Julie and Thomas know that their data is secure. From Thomas's perspective, he's able to deliver desktops to users in a fraction of the time that he traditionally would. He no longer needs to wait for hardware to be delivered or to install an operating system and application software. He simply logs into the Azure portal and can begin provisioning new desktops immediately. Windows Virtual Desktop was also designed from the ground up to work hand in hand with Office 365 Pro Plus. So all of the Office applications that you rely on are right there in Windows Virtual Desktop. The new FS Logic technologies from Microsoft, and we'll come into that in a little bit, mean that login and application launch times are sort of sped up dramatically, allowing you to deliver a great Office 365 experience, even in multi-user, non-persistent environments. Thomas is happy as it allows him to deliver a better experience to his users and improve the reputation of his department, while Julie is pleased that she can deliver a differentiated offering to her students and staff and faculty that helps them stand out from the competition. And Olivia is obviously very pleased that she can access all of her applications and files and data on the go from wherever she happens to be, while remaining secure and compliant. Windows Virtual Desktop also offers a simplified management and deployment experience, and we're going to go into that in a lot more detail, so I'm not going to steal Ryan's thunder, but it allows you to migrate your existing Windows Server remote desktop environment into the cloud quickly and easily. And probably my favorite feature of Windows Virtual Desktop is the ability to deploy and scale quickly and easily. Back in the day, I was involved in provisioning and managing remote desktop environments, and the time to deploy a new solution or to effectively scale an existing one was just far too long. Often I had to wait for new hardware, I had to configure it before I could even think about getting users up and running. Now I can quickly virtualize and deploy my modern and legacy apps into the cloud, manage them easily and in a unified way through the Azure portal, and then dynamically scale those as needed, ensuring I always have the horsepower I need to keep my users happy, but I'm never spending more than I need to, and can keep a bit more of a closer eye on those escalating costs. So I mentioned briefly there the FS Logic technologies, and I just wanted to call this out because this is a unique capability of Windows Virtual Desktop. This is a new acquisition for Microsoft, and they've integrated this technology directly into the WVD solution. And it allows you to get access to effectively these three core pieces of technology. So no doubt we've all felt the pain of roaming profiles and folder redirection. Profile containers roams your Office cache data and your Windows search database, leading to sort of much improved logon times, and also the speed with which applications can launch in those environments. App masking allows you to create a single gold image with all applications without the need to package and without the need to stand up specific infrastructure or virtualization technologies. And Java redirection allows you to map specific Java versions to specific apps or websites, so reduces the complexity and the security vulnerabilities inherent in managing multiple installed versions of Java. Now you've listened to me talk on for a while, and now I'd like to get to the bones of hopefully why you're here today. So we've had a little bit around Windows Virtual Desktop and how it can solve some of the challenges for both for IT and for the business and for your users and your staff and your faculty and your students. But now let's dive into a demo for how that works, for which I'm going to hand you over to my colleague Ryan. Ryan is our senior solutions architect and has just returned from Microsoft Ignite in Orlando, where he dived deeper into the Windows Virtual Desktop world. So without any further ado, Ryan, over to you.
Thanks, Rob. So as Rob mentioned, I'm a cloud solutions architect here at Sol-Tec, and I'm going to be giving you a high-level overview demo on Windows Virtual Desktop. What I'll be demonstrating today, the few things is we're going to deploy a new Windows Virtual Desktop host pool with an Azure Marketplace image running Windows 10 multi-session and Office 365. I'll give you an overview of the management GUI, pretending to be Olivia and connecting to a session host, saving the document, demonstrating FS logic, and reconnecting to a different host inside the same pool. I'll also be using remote app to stream Google Chrome straight to my Windows OS client, and as well as going over some basic migration activities you can perform. So you hear me use some keywords today, and I just wanted to give a brief explanation of what they use. So some words I might use is tenant. The tenant is the primary interface for managing your Windows Virtual Desktop environment. It must be associated with an Azure AD containing the users you want to access your host pools. You may also hear the word tenant group. You will start with a default group. For most businesses, this is all that you're going to need, but in some instances, you may want to group multiple tenants under one group to manage and inherit certain properties. Final word I may say is host pool. A host pool is a collection of Azure virtual machines that are registered to the Windows Virtual Desktop service. These are much like sessions hosts on premises. That can be your RDS farms or Citrix VDIs. So without further ado, I'll start. So before I get started, I've done some prerequisite setup ahead of today. I've installed the necessary PowerShell module, which we use for creating Windows Virtual Desktop tenants, host pools, and controlling other settings. I've also already enabled the enterprise application in Azure AD for the Windows Virtual Desktop service and created a tenant with 2 host pools ahead of time that we will use later on in the demo. I've also set up a service principal in Azure AD and granted it RDS owner over our tenant. So as you can see here, I'm just running through some commands. Just to note, this is Windows PowerShell, not PowerShell Core, as the Windows Virtual Desktop module is not compatible with PowerShell Core. So some of the commands that I'm running is you saw me get the PowerShell module to show it's installed. I've authenticated to the virtual desktop service that's hosted by Microsoft. Just now, I'm getting the tenant. Next, so just going to grab the service principal ID. And there we go. You can see the role assignment I've given my service principal. And finally, I'll just get and show you the 2 host pools that I've already deployed. Yeah. Right. So next, we're going to go into the Azure portal and I'm going to deploy a Windows Virtual Desktop host pool. I'm going to select create a new resource. From here, I will search for Windows Virtual Desktop host pool option and select create. And I'm going to fill in some information such as the region, the host pool name, the type of host pool I'm going to use in this instance is the personal option. The only user is going to be myself for now, and the metadata is in the United States. I'm going to select the number of users I want to deploy this for. It's just me. Change my virtual machine size. I only need 4 cores. And I'm going to give a virtual name prefix. All virtual machines will be named in ascending order. So I'm going to select to use the Azure Gallery, Windows 10 Enterprise, with Office 365 installed. All hosts in the host pool, we must join them to a Windows Server Active Directory. So I'm going to give the details of a service account here for joining the domain. Just a sec while I get my password from my password safe. I'll also provide the name of the domain we're going to be joining and also the organizational unit I would like to store the computer object in. Finally, just going to select the Azure Virtual Network that has connectivity to my Windows Server AD. Moving on, I'm going to select the tenant to associate my host pool with. I'm authenticating here. I'm going to use the service principal that I've created. The setup can be completed with a UPN, but multi-factor authentication is not currently supported on the UPN. So just get my password from the password safe for the service principal. Go and put in the Azure AD tenant ID. Click review and create. And then create. So the ARM deployment will now run. This ARM deployment will create the host pool in the Windows Virtual Desktop service. It will deploy my personal VDI and associate it with the host pool for me. Now, in the interest of time, this will take about 10 minutes to deploy. I only have about 20 to complete this full demo. So I'm going to show you the host pool that I created ahead of time. So okay. So first off, I'm going to go into the Windows Virtual Desktop Management Portal to show you the host pool I prepared earlier. From this portal, you can view and manage your tenants and change the tenant group that you're viewing. Drilling down into the tenant group, you can see I have 2 host pools already. You can also see here is that the first host pool is non-persistent for pooled session hosts and the second is persistent for personal VDIs. From here, I can create and edit host pool settings as well as delete. Selecting the first host pool, you can see that I have 2 hosts in this host pool that are both allowing connections. From the host pool context, I can view connected users and edit the settings of the host, such as putting a host into drain mode. I can also delete hosts, but it's important to note this only dissociates the host from the host pool and doesn't remove the VM from Azure. You can also look at app group settings for the host pool, where you can see there's a default application group for granting a remote session to session hosts. There is also a Google Chrome application group for doing remote app. I can create and edit the application groups as well as add and remove users. I can also delete the app group as well. So next, I'm going to pretend I'm being Olivia. There are several ways I can connect to the session host. I can do it with a web browser, Windows client, Mac, iOS, and Android. So a lot of options. So I'll start with showing you the browser option. So I'm going to start by opening a new browser tab, and I'm going to copy and paste the virtual desktop client URL. Just sign into the portal here. So in the top right, you can see the current logged in user. And under settings, some settings are company managed. Just going to full screen my browser session. I'll be using the first host pool, which is our pooled session host option. Just going to sign in. Type my username and password. Okay. No, I don't want you to remember my password. So now that I'm logged in, you can see I have a few applications installed on this session host. This includes Google Chrome, Firefox, and Office 365. This host pool was deployed in the same way I deployed the first host pool, but instead of an Azure gallery image, I am using a custom image. The important thing to note is this session host is non-persistent and can easily be redeployed. This also means that the user directory is not stored on the session host. We're not using folder redirect or roaming profiles. What we're using is, as Rob mentioned earlier, FS logic, which very simply mounts a profile container from an SMB share. We're using a Windows file server in our demo, but you can also use Azure files or Azure NetApp files for high levels of performance. As well as you can use FS Logic Cloud Cache configuration. This means you can set up 4 different providers, such as the ones mentioned, as well as Azure Blob Storage. This will allow for high availability and redundancy. So let me show you how this works. So first, I'm going to start a new document. This is some text. And I'm going to save a document. And I'm going to save the document on my desktop. This is a document. So desktop. Done. Now that we've saved the file, we check the host I'm currently located on. So I'm going to launch PowerShell. And I'm just going to type host name. And as you can see, I'm logged into host 1. I'm going to log off, and then we're going to set this host into drain mode so I can't log back onto it. So FS Logic, shut down. There we go. Okay, so let's move to the management portal and drain the host. So the management portal will locate host 1. And we'll select to drain it, preventing any new sessions. Now for the reconnection, I'm going to show you this being done from iOS. So I'm just going to switch over screen while we'll watch me connecting from iOS, and most importantly to host number 0, where we'll see my document. So I'll launch a remote desktop app and select connect to the first session pool. Give me a second while I type my username and password. This is much harder on an iPhone. I am typing in my password. iOS just very conveniently hides this from the screen. So, okay. Let's just wait for the login to complete. And as you can see, located on the desktop will be our document. I'm going to go ahead and open this. While that loads, I'm just going to start PowerShell. Forgive the 4G connection here, slight bit of lag. Okay. Now we have PowerShell. This is much harder with fat fingers. I'm just going to show the host name. And as you can see, we're connected to host 0. Now behind PowerShell, you can see that the contents of the document are created earlier. There we go. So from one host to another, and to using iOS. And it's done. Let's log off, and I'll show you a Google Chrome remote app running on the Windows OS client. Go back to my desktop. So now I'm back on my desktop. As you can see, I've launched the Windows OS client, but rather than seeing a host port option, as I did with the browser option and iOS, you can see a Google Chrome remote app. I'm mimicking another user for this. So if I double click the Google Chrome app, Google Chrome is launched as a remote app. And if you look at the little icon, it is running in a remote app session. Additionally, if I go to the management portal and select host 0 and select user sessions, you can see the user logged in. From here, I can force the log off of the user, killing the remote app session. So I've demonstrated how you can rapidly deploy a personal VDI in minutes and connecting to host pools, as well as moving between hosts in the pool with all my files instantly available to me seamlessly. The next part I'm going to move on to is how you may want to migrate your existing RDS environments from on-premises and into Windows Virtual Desktop. This is a two-phase process, involves assessment and migration. Now, in the interest of time, I won't be able to do a complete assessment and migration here today, but I am going to demonstrate the process of creating an Azure Migrate project using the two tools on offer from Microsoft today. To do this, you go to Azure Migrate in the Azure portal, where you can select a VDI on the left-hand side. We'll click Add Tools and the following wizard, creating a new migration project. We'll name the project and where we want to store the metadata. Next, we will select an assessment tool from a Microsoft partner called Lakeside. And then we will select the migration tool called Server Migration. Then click Next and Review and to add the tools. Both steps are optional. So if you already have a well-tuned environment on premises, you could skip the migration step. Or if the migration tool doesn't offer support for migrating from your source environment, an alternative can be used instead. Sol-Tec offers a selection of assessment and migration methods. Now, in the interest of time, let's assume we've completed our assessment and migration of our VDIs from on-premises to Azure. And I'm going to show you how easy it is to then register your migrated VDI to a host pool. So glancing back to the Windows Virtual Desktop Management Portal and looking at my other host pool, you can see there are currently no hosts associated with it. So to get started registering VDIs, I need to generate a registration token for the empty host pool. At the moment, this activity can only be achieved with PowerShell using the module I showed you installed earlier at the beginning of the demo. So in PowerShell, I'm going to use the new registration token command and the parameters for my tenant and host pool name. And now that we have the registration token, I'm going to copy it into the clipboard for use later on. Again, in the interest of time, I've set up a Windows 7 Enterprise VM in Azure, representing my migrated VDI from on-premises. I'm just going to go to the VM properties to remind myself of the DNS name. I'm just going to launch RDP. Bear with me a few seconds. Okay. I don't want to remember my admin credentials. Connect. Let me just get my password from my password safe. Just full screen this connection. And now that we're connected, let's launch IE and install the necessary agents. So bear with me while I download two agents onto the VDI. So the first agent is the desktop agent used to register the VDI with the host pool. The second agent is the desktop management agent. So bear with me, this one. This is number 2. Folder. So to begin, we'll start with the desktop agent install. Yes, I'll accept terms and conditions. There's token. Let's get that from my clipboard. There we go. Next and install. So while this runs, there are a few things I completed ahead of time with this Windows 7 VDI. The first was I installed the Remote Desktop Protocol 8 update. This is necessary for Windows 7 and Server 2008 R2 to function with Windows Virtual Desktop. Secondly, I set the group policy as well to enable Remote Desktop Protocol 8. This is important to allow the connection to work between the Windows Virtual Desktop client and the VDI. So it's almost finished. There we go, finished. Now we'll install the management agent. Next, yes. Next, install. And while this one runs, the other important thing to mention is if you are properly licensed to run Windows Virtual Desktop workloads, for any migrated VDIs or session hosts, you will have to set the setting on the virtual machine in Azure. You can do this in the same way you would enable the hybrid benefit in the VM properties blade or via PowerShell. Now the install is complete, we'll log off from the server and show you the host pool is now registered. The VDI is now registered within the host pool. Where we go? Right. So back to the Windows Virtual Desktop Management Portal, and by hitting refresh, you shall see that the VDI pops up. And now from here, I'm going to go back to Mimic and Olivia, and go back to the web client. I'm going to select my second host pool. Let's go through the username and password. All right, username. And password. And there you go. I've successfully connected to the Windows 7 VDI that I have migrated from on-premises. So just to close off on the migration, as you can see, very easy to register your existing RDSH or VDIs from on-premises with Windows Virtual Desktop Service. During the migration, you'll also need to consider migrating your user directories as well, before or after to the FS logic. This has many migration approaches depending on your current RDS environment setup. Microsoft are currently developing a user profile disk to FS logic migration solution, which is available in preview. In areas like this is where Sol-Tec have an array of migration approaches for moving user directories to overcome these challenges. So that concludes my demo, and I'm going to hand over back to Rob to finish out the rest of the webinar.
Hi, perfect. Thank you very much there, Ryan. We just wanted to talk around what other additional resources are available to you to help you sort of take advantage of everything that we've just shown you. So following the end of this webinar, you will all get a link to a landing page that includes some additional information around Windows Virtual Desktop. As you'd probably expect, it also includes a link to the recording of this webinar and some other handy and useful links in case you do have any other questions that we can't answer today for you. We'd also like to help you realize the benefits of Windows Virtual Desktop. So we do offer some pilot services as well to help you transition or migrate your existing environment, or to stand up a new environment as a Windows Virtual Desktop environment to prove the concept before going live. And if you're already at the position where you know that Windows Virtual Desktop is something that you'd like to take forward, and something that you'd like to explore further, we can of course offer a personalised proposal as well for how you and your organisation could benefit from this quickly and easily, and we could get this stood up for you very quickly. As mentioned, we are Azure Migration experts, and we are able to guide you, pardon me, through that process and take you a step further. That concludes the content for today. Now, just having a look to see if we've got any questions. Let me just see if there's anything that we can answer for you today. So we had the question around, will this webinar be available offline? Yes, both the recording and the content will be available for you to download from that landing page. It will come out as a link later. We've also had a question around any idea when Microsoft will allow the assignment of VMs to groups of users as opposed to individual users, and I see there that Wes has already commented on that, but we will of course take that question away, and if we can come back with a further answer, then we will. There's also a question around licensing, and actually this one's really interesting. So how do we purchase Windows Virtual Desktop? And what happens to our existing Windows Server RDS licenses? So the good news is that for, I'm guessing, the majority of organizations on this call, if you're already licensed for, say, the A3 or the A5 license bundle from Microsoft, then the Windows Virtual Desktop solution itself is included and covered in that cost. As mentioned, all that you'd have to pay for is the VMs and the storage cost that they're consuming inside Azure, and there's some further information and more detail on the landing page exactly around how that works and what parts you do get access to. Also had a question from Anthony around what devices can run Windows Virtual Desktop. Do you need an app? So as I hope Ryan demonstrated, there are a number of ways that you can access Windows Virtual Desktop. So whether you choose to use a rich client PC device, whether you want to use a sort of an RDS client, or you want to use a browser either on your laptop or on your phone or tablets, it's all there as well. We've got some further questions around RDS instances being a bit clunky and expensive, and how do we control costs in Windows Virtual Desktop? So the good news is you can set, as with everything in Azure, the limits and costing limits. We also provide a service that allows you to delegate some of that to individual users. So say you wanted to give your research teams or your researchers access to the ability to create their own Windows Virtual Desktops for sort of completing their work. You could then assign some limits and some costs around that as well. I can see we've got a question around PowerShell, and that Wes is currently frantically typing a reply to that, so I'll wait to see if he's got an answer to that question. I guess the key is as well that we are capturing all of the questions that we have received today, and where possible we will be sending a personalised follow-up to each of those for the people that have asked them if we weren't able to answer them today. So just seeing if we've got any more. There's a question here that I think Ryan is replying to around, is a whole new Azure tenant required for Windows Virtual Desktop? Can we not use an existing tenant? Ryan will correct me if I'm wrong, but yes, you can use your existing tenant. There's no need to stand up an additional tenant for Windows Virtual Desktop.
Correct. Yep, just replied.
Perfect.
So,
lovely. So I think that's all the questions that we have at the moment. So thank you all very much for your time. As I say, you will receive some further information after this call, which will have some details on there. If there are any burning questions or anything that you need an immediate answer to, you can also contact us at wvd@sol-tech.com, and one of our Azure specialists will be more than happy to answer any questions that you might have. But with that, I'll thank you all again for your time. Thank you, Ryan, for all of your effort on the demo. And with that, we'll end this webinar. So thank you all very much.